Hi, welcome to my first episode on the Best for Baby podcast. I've chosen a topic that I think will be of interest to you because it's the one thing I've been asked about and given more information about in my long career of working with tiny babies. And that is, of course, the truth about tummy time. What is tummy time? Why do we need to do tummy time? Why is it even a thing? What happens if we haven't done tummy time with our babies in the past and they're much bigger now? And how can I get it right because my baby hates it? These are all the things I'm going to be talking to you about, and hopefully these will answer all your questions. If you need any more information, then find me at physiobaby.co.uk and ask me your questions. So what I want to start with saying is that I will be mentioning briefly cot death and sudden infant death syndrome, which can be a really triggering topic for anybody who has had to deal with this tragedy. And I would offer you my deepest sympathies and say that perhaps you need to decide if this is the right episode for you to listen to. Firstly, why is tummy time even a thing? Well, we know that since the 90s, we've been told to put our babies to sleep on their backs. And this has been really successful in reducing the incidence of cot death by a significant amount. So we don't question that. At nighttime, it is essential that your baby sleeps on their back because you're not there to observe them. You cannot tell if they are still breathing well or if anything has covered their faces. So the safest position for them to be, for that reason, is on their backs when you cannot supervise them and watch them. However, the result of this is that our new babies, and certainly for the first 4 or 5 months of their lives, spend most of their 24-hour period lying flat on their backs. Now, babies can sleep for some of them 18, 19 hours a day. So that would mean that they are flat on their backs for that amount of time. And then a lot of their awake time is spent with them in a car seat, lying on their backs in a pushchair, lying flat on their backs in a baby gym, looking at the toys hanging down above them. So very little of that 24-hour period is actually spent with our babies off their backs. Now, tummy time is like an incredible gym session for a baby. It develops their strength, it develops their core muscles, it is so good for helping with their digestion and their muscle tone. It helps them with their respiratory system, with good oxygenation through their bodies. And also in the early stages, when babies lie on their tummies, they turn their head to one side, and then the next time they're on their tummies, they might turn their head to the other side. And as a result, we have really good redirection of pressure onto the head. And this just means that it's really crucial in developing the traditional sort of oval-shaped head we know most babies to have. The other thing is that babies have a startle reflex. They move through sleep cycles, and when they're in light sleep, they can startle suddenly and their little arms shoot out, and that can wake them up. Now, if they're on their tummies, they'll push into the surface and they sleep again. So it promotes good sleep and connecting of sleep cycles. We try and do 5 minutes a day here, some people just a few seconds a day. And so babies are robbed of an enormous opportunity to be spending time and developing all these lovely skills and having good uninterrupted sleep because they don't spend enough time on their tummies. And as a result, we're now seeing a lot of head shape changes in babies. You might have heard of baby flathead syndrome, where they can have a flattening at the back of the head or to one side of the head. Neck muscle imbalances, where the baby has been in one position in the womb and therefore one side of the neck is a bit stiff and tight. In the past, if they spent enough time on their tummies, they would turn their heads and stretch that out. These sort of problems in the neck are persisting where the baby would have sorted them out themselves. We also find that our babies don't sleep so well anymore because they're having all these startle reflexes and they just can't settle so well. And as a result, we need to swaddle our babies. And swaddling itself, I'll talk about that sometime because it's a huge controversy. Should we do it? How do we do it? But we find it's the only thing that can help a baby to have a startle reflex, and they push into the swaddle and then they can settle, as opposed to lying on their backs, having a startle reflex and flailing their limbs and waking themselves up. So we are also finding poorer sleep as a result of all of this. We're finding that babies haven't quite developed their strength and their lovely muscle tone. So we're seeing a lot more reflux as a result of it. And finally, they're not developing their neck muscles, their shoulder girdle, strength and stability. So we see a bit of delayed development. That said, there are always children you put on their backs 24 hours a day and they don't have any of these difficulties. But there are a lot of children that really battle without being given more opportunity for enough tummy time. So what do we do? Well, the key is that at nighttime, your baby has to sleep on their back. You're not there to supervise them. You cannot ensure their safety. So they must sleep on their back. And that's a huge chunk, which leaves us with the rest of the hours of the day when you are awake and able to watch your baby or interact with your baby. So firstly, in that time, we'd be doing active tummy time with your baby, or side-lying activities when your baby's awake and you're playing with them on their sides, on their tummies, on your chest. You'll be carrying your baby, in the lovely little, they call it baby wearing, these lovely little soft slings that squish the baby and hold them comfortably against you. And that already takes them off their back rather than lying them flat on their backs when they're awake and just staring at toys dangling above them. Then the last thing we really want to think about is the napping during the day. So if you are supervising your baby, you can watch your baby, you can guarantee they are safe, you can see that they are breathing well, then there isn't actually a problem with your baby having a daytime supervised nap on their tummy or on their side. Now, if you're going to go down this route, the essential thing is to create a safe space where your baby can nap on their side or on their tummy during the day. And a safe space is somewhere that you can see. So if you are going to be busy in your kitchen, then it needs to be on the kitchen floor where you can watch them. Why I say the floor is because you don't want to put them on a sofa or a chair or a table where they can fall off. You may be convinced your baby is not yet ready to roll, but the likelihood is while your back is turned, somehow they will roll and fall. So we always want to make sure they are flat on the ground. And this is fine. If you have a tiled floor, there are so many lovely options out there of soft sort of foam mats that can just create a soft, warmer surface for the baby. What we don't want is you to put a whole lot of pillows on the ground, because that's a really soft surface that the baby can sink into. And as soon as the baby's head is turned to the side and asleep, if you've got a soft surface that pushes up and they sink into, that can cover their nose and mouth and do what we call obstructing their airway, where they won't be able to breathe effectively. We also would want to make sure that your safe space, wherever it may be, so it's around you is the first point, even if it's on the floor, ideally on the floor, it's around you where you've got your eyes on them all the time. Secondly, it's a firm surface, as I've explained. It's not something that they're sinking into. You can also, if you've got a carpeted floor, just put down a soft sheet or a soft blanket, and that's to make sure that you don't have too many soft layers. A safe space is also a place that is not up against a wall. If you've got a really big sofa that your baby can't roll off, you don't want the baby to be against the side where you think it's safe because the baby can't roll off. If it's up against the armrest or the backrest of a sofa, that's going to be a non-breathable area where there's no airflow. Your safe space has to have airflow around the baby's nose and mouth. So we want to make sure that there's no ruffled up blankets, no armrests, no backrests, no soft toys. If you're going to pop a blanket over them, you'll make sure that the blanket extends as high as the middle of your baby's back, just below the shoulders, because we don't want the blanket to come up and cover their faces either. So I've said we're going to do nap time on their tummies or on their sides, where you are doing it in a safe space that is supervised by you. It's not soft. It's got plenty of airflow on all sides for baby, and it's not an elevated surface where your baby can roll off. That's really important. However, the great question is, how do I get my baby to do this? My baby hates it. I can't do it. My baby cries. So let's start it. First things first, if you are in the fortunate position that your baby is brand new and you're hearing this, or perhaps you're still pregnant, then the idea is to start immediately. You don't have to wait. A lot of people have the misconception that babies can only go onto their tummies after 3 months. And the problem with this is that a baby has now grown, but they've never been in this position before. So they're much heavier, their levers are that much longer, which means it's that much harder. They have to be so much stronger in order to be comfortable on their tummies and lift their heads up and turn their heads from side to side. And if their baby hasn't been in this position, slowly building up the strength to match the rate of growth, we're going to have a problem. And the baby's going to hate it because it's just going to be too difficult. So start immediately. Day 1, your baby just being on your chest, holding your baby against your chest. That is tummy time. If you are standing upright, it's not really so much tummy time, but if you sit down and lean back a little bit, that's tummy time, because your baby is getting used to having contact with the whole of the front of their body against a surface, and to be weight bearing through the front of their body and not the back of their body. So that's really helpful for them, because it just builds up that sensation of being used to being on the tummy. And the more you do it and the flatter you get, the more you're going to be building up the strength as well, so that it's not so difficult for them. However, if your baby is older and you are now trying to implement tummy time and they've already grown and they've got longer levers, it is going to be that much trickier. And so what we need to do is make it as easy as possible for your baby, so they don't have to fight against the increased weight and difficulty. So what we do with that is we don't put them flat on their tummies. If you can have them on an incline, like a wedge or up against your chest without you lying flat, it just means that their chest and their head is higher than their bottom. And that will make it so much easier for your baby to be able to lift up their head and turn their head to the side, because ultimately that's what they want to do. If we place them on their tummies and their faces down, they're not going to like it. They're going to turn their head so that they can breathe to the side. But if they're not strong enough to lift their head up and turn it to the side, they're going to start to cry. So by making their head a little bit higher than their bottoms, so they're lying on a ramp, that means it's that much easier for them to lift their head and get it to the side. Even if you put your baby down lying looking to one side, they may dislike looking that way. They may have some tightness in the neck muscles and just feel like they want to move their head so that it's not completely rotated in that direction. Then they need to be really strong in order to do this. And if they aren't strong enough to do it, they're going to protest. And so it's all about making this as easy as possible for your little baby. So you can create a ramp by putting a pillow underneath your baby's a mattress and then putting that on the floor once you're starting to just get used to it. You can also use a ready-made wedge that you can buy, or you can do it on your chest. So you hold your baby standing upright, get them really snuggled in and comfortable against you, and then you go and sit down, and then you lean right back until you are quite far reclined and your baby is lying on their chest on you. This would indicate, however, that you're probably getting yourself comfortable on a sofa. So just make sure that if your baby's head is turned to the side, it's not against the armrest of the sofa. You need to make sure, even when your baby's on your chest and you're watching them, that they've got really good airflow all around their face. So we're getting fresh oxygen in and not a buildup of carbon dioxide where they are just breathing out against a barrier. But make it easy by being on you, and your baby's going to smell you. They're going to love being against you, And so that's probably the biggest motivational way to get your baby to stay on their tummy and get used to it. And then later we start moving to putting them on the safe space you have selected on the ground. The good thing about once you start moving your baby onto the safe space is if you're always using the safe space for tummy time, even their awake tummy time when you're going to play with them, they will be used to it. They will be used to the smells, whatever the blanket is that you use, the surrounding lighting and sounds, whatever it is, and they will associate that with tummy time. So they will learn to get used to it and expect what's coming. Even your tiny little babies will be able to start making this sort of a connection. And because they will start making a connection, it's really important that you make it a positive connection for them so that they're keen for it. So we're going to make it pleasant. You might have something interesting for the baby to look at, like a little mirror in front of them or to the side if they're still lying looking to the side. If it's a tiny baby, there's lots of those little black, red and white contrast toys that you cards or sort of long unfoldable toys that you can put to the side. So the baby will look to the side and be entertained. But the most motivating thing will be if you lie down face to face with your baby. So they're looking right at you, they're smelling you, and that will be comforting for them. And whilst you're doing that, you put one hand on their back. Now this is really comforting for a baby because you're going to make it a heavy hand. It's not just a tickle on their back, it's a really firm pressure with your hand on their back so that they can feel that lovely comforting pressure of your hand, a bit like a weighted blanket that we all know has now been proven to be calming for all of us. But also they can feel you and you can feel them breathing nicely. So they should be breathing into your hand, and that little bit of pressure from your hand is also going to draw the air that they breathe in down to the bases of their lungs and really inflate and expand their lungs. So it's a lovely, lovely activity. And while you've got them there, keeping them happy and motivated to be there, you want to keep them keen. So as soon as they start to complain, we don't force it. If they complain, you might tap their back, you might shush them, you might sing to them, you might snuggle them, you might show them a toy, anything to try and calm them. But if that doesn't calm them, then you would pick them up, console them in the usual way, cuddle them or roll them back onto their backs, cuddle them, do whatever it takes to really console them, let them be consoled and calm and happy for a few moments, and then do it again. And so we're going to build up time spent on the tummy with short bursts of happy tummy time rather than a long time of unhappy tummy time where your baby is protesting and unhappy with it, because there's no point. It's that keep them keen analogy, because we're not making it uncomfortable for them. We're going to just create this lovely safe space, but also with all kinds of positive connotations, and make your baby really happy to be in there doing the tummy time. For babies who have developed some good head control and are lifting their heads when they're lying on their tummies, you're going to really encourage that during the tummy time play. So you're going to put an object in front of them, not just to the side. You'll actually move it from the side and put it in front of them so that they have to look forwards and lift their head up to look at the object. So you might now move yourself and go and lie in front of your baby so that you are face to face, and that will encourage your baby to start lifting their head. To make it easier for your baby, you need to make sure their elbows are directly below their shoulders. This means that they're going to be leaning through their little elbows as if doing a plank, just exactly that same position, an elbow plank, where you put your elbows below your shoulders and you really get your stability going. And that way, the baby is going to develop their stability in their shoulders and their head control is going to improve. And so we want to encourage them to look up, help to place their elbows below their shoulders, and even hold their elbows there, because they might slide their elbows out or back. Now again, this is for slightly older babies, about 2, 3, 4 months, depending on how much exposure your baby has had to tummy time and how strong they are. With your older babies who are disliking tummy time because they haven't done it in the past, once you've spent a lot of time getting them used to it, being on your chest on a ramp, you can put them on a flat position, and this will be really helpful to them. And slowly on the back, then you pick them up, you console them, let them be consoled for a while, and try again. If your baby is much older and has never done any tummy time, if you find that their development is really going well according to, the typical milestone ranges, if your baby's sitting up, if they're crawling, if they're rolling and doing all these things, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I think if your baby is moving, it's going to be very hard to pin them down and force them to do tummy time. It's more important to put them on their tummies and then let them move away and crawl out of it and roll out of it and do all of those kind of things. However, there will be times when your baby's a bit calmer, a bit sleepier, that you could perhaps try and implement a bit of tummy time, having them on your chest and then reclining so that their head is a little bit higher and they're comfortable snuggled against you. However, if your baby is a little bit older and their development is delayed and they haven't done any tummy time, it's worth trying really slowly. If you've done almost no tummy time thus far and you start doing tiny short bursts, so they do 10 seconds, then you roll them back, 10 seconds, you roll them back, 10 seconds, you roll them back, and you slowly build up that time to doing more and more throughout the day, it will always be helpful for your baby. So to recap, if it's nighttime, your baby sleeps on their back in their cot where they're safe. During the day, they can sleep on their tummies or their sides if they are supervised by you in a safe space. So that's not in your baby's cot. We don't want a baby, a lot of the next to me cots have got mesh, or especially if your cot has a cot bumper, anything like that, a baby can, get a buildup of carbon dioxide in between their face and the side of the cot, particularly things like a Moses basket. You would never let your baby sleep in something like that on their tummies or their sides. It has to be in the safe space, which is a big open area with good airflow. The baby's not going to end up with their face against anything, and they're not going to fall off anything, and they're still going to be supervised by you. And then when they are awake, you're going to do awake tummy time, keeping them keen, making it motivational, using your safe space so that they can create a positive connotation to that safe space. And you're going to lie down, be with your baby face to face, knowing that it may be tough now, but you're going to do short bursts. You're going to build it up slowly, with the goal that over time you'll be able to put your baby down in the safe space and they will play on their tummies for quite some time without you needing to be there with them. And if they fall asleep, they're in the safe space, which means you can cast an eye over them and they will be safe to nap in that position. And this is all going to reduce the amount of time they spend on their backs. And slowly, over time, this will have all the knock-on positive effects that we get from babies sleeping on their tummies. And the last thing to say is that as soon as your baby rolls over on their own at nighttime and ends up on their tummy, that's okay. You're not going to go and turn your baby back onto their back once they are a rolling baby, because the theory is that your baby is now strong enough, should they end up on their tummy, to be able to move out of an unsafe situation. If your baby is rolling over onto their tummy and sleeping like that, I would always suggest getting rid of a cot bumper though, because that is something that can build up the carbon dioxide between the baby's nose and mouth and the cot bumper. Some of them say that they are breathable, but that's for you to do your own research. I wouldn't use a cot bumper. And yes, your baby's legs do sometimes get trapped, but that's why a sleeping bag is quite a nice idea, so that that leg doesn't get trapped in between the bars. And of course, you wouldn't leave your baby's cot full of soft toys and loose blankets. So I hope that's all made sense. There's been a bit of recap, so sorry for the rehashing of certain content, but I hope that makes sense, and let me know if you have any more questions, and all the best for your baby.